Elizabeth too seemed to rejuvenate. In August, she rode for 10 miles and then went hunting. She was aged almost 69, and yet she boasted she was in better health than she'd been for 10 years. It was an Indian summer, glorious but brief. It could not last.
For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground and tell sad stories of the death of kings. Let's talk of graves, of worms and epitaphs. Make dust our paper, and with rainy eyes write sorrow on the bosom of the earth.
By March 1603, Elizabeth was in serious decline. She was suffering from ulcers in the throat, fever, and lack of appetite. Against all advice, she refused to go to bed. Cecil, unwisely, insisted that she must.
Little man, the word must is not to be used to princes. But ye know that I must die, and that makes thee so presumptuous. If you were in the habit of seeing such things in your bed, as I do when in mine, you would not persuade me to go there.
After 2 weeks on the floor in the same clothes, Elizabeth asked her attendants to get her to her feet. But still, she did not go to bed. Instead, she remained standing in total silence for the next 15 hours.
She appeared already in a manner insensible, holding her finger continually in her mouth, with her eyes open and fixed to the ground.
As Elizabeth's death approached, a young man was pacing the courtyards of the palace. He was Robert Carey, the Queen's cousin, and he'd resolved to make his fortune in the new reign by being the first to let James know that Elizabeth was dead and that he was King of England. He informed James of his intention and told him not to leave Edinburgh. And then he returned to the palace to watch and to wait with the rest.
O Almighty God, with whom do live the spirits of just men made perfect, after they are delivered from their earthly prison.
Elizabeth was preparing herself for the end.
The Archbishop kneeled down beside her and examined her first of her faith. And she so punctually answered all his questions, by lifting up her eyes and holding up her hand, as it was a comfort to all the beholders. Then the good man told her plainly what she was and what she was come to. Though she had been long a great queen here upon earth, yet shortly she was to yield an account of her stewardship to the King of Kings.
At 10 o'clock at night, on the 23rd of March, 1603, Elizabeth falls into a deep sleep. She never woke up. Three days later, James VI was proclaimed as Elizabeth's successor at Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh. England and Scotland were joined under one monarch. Elizabeth's body was brought by water from Richmond to Whitehall. There it lay for 5 weeks, watched over day and night by her ladies-in-waiting. Then it was taken to Westminster Abbey for burial. The funeral effigy on top of the coffin was so lifelike that from the great crowds lining the route, nothing was heard but a general sighing, groaning, and weeping. Elizabeth the woman was dead, but the achievement of Gloriana, the great Queen of England, lived on. When Elizabeth came to the throne, England was an insignificant country. When she died, it was a major European power. She had begun her reign by promising to avoid the mistakes of her sister Mary. By and large, she succeeded. Elizabeth had founded a national church, and she inspired a national literature. Her father, Henry VIII, had reinvented the idea of England. Elizabeth became its living embodiment. Few monarchs have been better loved by their subjects. None has exercised a more powerful hold over the imagination of succeeding generations. The myth started within a few years of her death, when the preface to the King James Bible hails her as that bright occidental star, Queen Elizabeth of famous memory, and the star still burns bright.